She gave his hungry children milk. He risked everything to save her ranch before winter. 6 weeks. That is all the letter gave her. 6 weeks before the bank took everything Claire Whitfield had left, and I was the only one standing in that machine shed who understood exactly how much danger she was really in. My name is Telkari, though the humans on that road just called me Belle, and when I read that foreclosure notice over her shoulder, my hands were already shaking before she even noticed I had come back. 3 years earlier, I had walked 12 miles down a frozen dirt road with a hatchling clinging to my back, and 2 more stumbling behind me, all of us starving, all of us far from home. Claire had come out onto her porch with a shotgun in one hand and a lantern in the other. She had every reason to point that gun at me and pull the trigger. Instead, she set it down and poured warm milk for 3 alien children who had not eaten in 2 days. I never forgot that. I told myself, someday, I will pay this back. I did not know it would mean racing against a clock that could destroy her life. Now I stood in her shed reading a letter from a company called First Continental Ag Holdings, and every word on that page felt like a threat aimed straight at her heart. The debt was too large, the timing was too exact, and when I looked closer at the numbers, something did not sit right with me. No drought in this county had ever cost a rancher this much money this fast, not even the worst one on record. Something else was killing her land, and I intended to find out what before the 6 weeks ran out. Claire didn't recognize me right away. My winter plates had grown thicker since we last spoke, and the translator clipped to my throat made my words come out smooth and human. Nothing like the broken, clicking speech she remembered. "Belle," she finally said, and her eyes went wet the way human eyes do when someone is trying very hard not to cry. "Look at you. You gave my children milk when you had every reason to turn us away," I told her. "I have not forgotten that, and I am not leaving until your ranch is safe." She tried to wave that off, the way proud people do when kindness embarrasses them. I did not let her. There was no time for pride. The clock had already started. That night, I walked the edges of her land with a scanner hidden under a borrowed coat, checking the soil the way my people are trained to check it, before planting anything on a new world. The readings made my breathing slits tighten in alarm. The water table under her ranch was poisoned, not by nature, but by something artificial, something that matched a chemical signature I recognized instantly. It was Telkari soil treatment technology, the kind my own people used decades ago to clear unwanted growth from mining sites. It should never have existed on Earth. It was restricted under compact law. Someone had smuggled it here, and someone was using it to destroy small ranches one well at a time, then buy the dying land for almost nothing. I did not sleep that night. I sat awake at Claire's kitchen table with old maps spread out in front of me, marking every ranch in the county that had failed in the last 2 years. 6 ranches, 6 wells gone bad in ways nobody could explain, 6 families forced to sell to the same company. My hands trembled as I realized what this meant. It was not bad luck. It was not drought. It was a plan, carried out quietly, county by county, while everyone blamed the weather. At sunrise, Claire found me still sitting there, staring at the maps like they might rearrange themselves into an answer I could act on faster. She poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from me without asking a single question, which told me she trusted me more than most humans would trust anyone, alien or not. "Someone poisoned your well on purpose," I said. There was no easy way to say it, so I did not try to soften it. "Illegal technology, my people's technology. Someone brought it here to force ranchers like you off your land." Her hands tightened around the coffee cup until her knuckles went pale. "Who would do that?" "First Continental," I said. "The same company sending you foreclosure letters. They are buying failing land at almost nothing, and I believe they are the reason it is failing in the first place." For a long moment she said nothing at all. Then she looked at me with an expression I recognized from 3 years earlier, the same steady fire she had when she chose to trust a starving stranger instead of fearing him. "Then we stop them," she said simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I wished it were that simple. Proving a crime like this required evidence that would survive scrutiny from both human courts and the Compact Council, and gathering that evidence meant walking straight into danger neither of us was prepared for. The first step was collecting clean samples from every failed well in the county, matched against samples from wells that were still healthy, so the chemical trail could not be denied by lawyers or bought scientists. Claire knew every rancher on that road, and by mid-morning we had a plan to visit each property before nightfall, moving fast, staying quiet, hoping nobody from First Continental noticed 2 people driving a rusted pickup truck from farm to farm, with sealed sample jars rattling in the back seat. At the 3rd ranch, owned by a quiet man named Daniel Foss, we found something that turned my caution into real fear. A drone, small and sleek, nothing like the agricultural drones used by local farmers, sat parked in his barn. its casing stamped with a serial number that traced back to a compact manufacturer under contract with First Continental. Daniel had found it stuck in mud near his well 3 days earlier, and simply forgotten about it, too consumed by his own well, going bad to think much of a broken machine in his barn. I photographed every angle of that drone, every serial number, every wire, my hands moving fast because something in my gut told me time was shorter than 6 weeks now. If First Continental realized their equipment had been discovered, they would move to erase every trace of what they had done, and Claire's ranch, along with 5 others, would disappear into a paper trail nobody could ever untangle. We were halfway back to Claire's truck when headlights swung into the driveway behind us, sharp and sudden in the darkening evening. A black company vehicle rolled to a stop, and 2 men stepped out wearing jackets with the First Continental logo stitched over the chest. My pulse spiked, though I kept my face calm, the way I had learned to do during years of tense negotiations. "Evening," one of the men called out, his voice friendly in a way that did not match his eyes. "Didn't expect visitors out this far. You folks lost?" Claire answered before I could, her voice steady and unbothered. "Just checking on Daniel. Neighbors do that out here." The man's gaze drifted toward the sample jars barely hidden under a blanket in the truck bed, and for one long heartbeat I thought he would ask about them directly. Instead he smiled, a thin, careful smile, and said something about hoping the Whitfield ranch was holding up fine despite the dry season. It was not a question. It was a warning, wrapped in polite words, and Claire heard it exactly the way I did. We drove away without speaking until the ranch lights disappeared behind us. Then Claire let out a breath she had clearly been holding the entire time. "They know," she said, "or they're about to." "Then we move faster," I said, though my mind was already racing through every possible way this could go wrong. By the following night, we had samples from all 6 failed wells and 3 healthy ones for comparison, along with photographs of the drone and its serial numbers. It was enough to file a formal complaint with the Compact Trade Council, but filing alone would take weeks to process through normal channels, weeks Claire did not have. I needed something faster, something that would force immediate action, and there was only one option left that carried any real weight. I needed to reach an elder on the Trade Council directly, someone with the authority to freeze First Continental's license before the foreclosure could be finalized. The trouble was, elders did not take calls from junior liaisons over unofficial matters, no matter how urgent. I held a modest position within the Compact's agricultural division, respected enough to be useful, not important enough to be heard by the people who actually held power. If I wanted this taken seriously within days instead of weeks, I needed something impossible to ignore. I thought of Ski. My oldest hatchling was 12 years old now, old enough to speak for himself, old enough to remember exactly what it felt like to be starving on a frozen road with nowhere left to go. If a witness account from a hatchling who had nearly died on human soil reached the Elder Council attached to evidence of a patent violation worth millions, it would not be ignored. It could not be ignored. But asking my own child to relive that memory publicly felt like a cruelty I did not want to force on him, even for a cause this important. I called him that night from Claire's kitchen, my voice tight as I explained the situation as plainly as I could, holding nothing back, because Ski deserved honesty more than comfort. He was quiet for a long moment after I finished. "Will it save her ranch?" he asked finally. "It might be the only thing that does," I said. "Then I'll do it," he said, without hesitation, in a tone far steadier than I expected from someone so young. "She gave me milk when I thought I was going to die. I remember her face. I want to help her." I recorded his statement that same night, careful and unhurried, letting him tell the story in his own words. The cold road, the empty stomach, the porch light, the warm glass placed gently into his shaking hands. When he finished, I sat in silence for a moment, overwhelmed by how much courage lived inside someone so young. I submitted everything before dawn. The samples, the drone photographs, the serial numbers, Ski's statement, a formal complaint accusing First Continental of illegal use of restricted compact technology to deliberately destroy human farmland for profit. Then we waited, and waiting was its own kind of danger. 2 days passed with no response, and every hour felt heavier than the last. Claire kept working her ranch as though nothing had changed, feeding her cattle at dawn, mending fences at dusk, refusing to let fear slow her hands even once. I admired that about her more than I could put into words. Humans, I had learned over 3 years of living among them, carried a strange and stubborn kind of strength, one that did not wait for certainty before it acted. On the 3rd night, the black company truck returned. This time there were 3 men instead of 2, and they did not bother pretending to be friendly. They parked directly in front of Claire's house, headlights aimed straight at the porch, and one of them stepped out holding a folder thick with papers. "Evening, Miss Whitfield," he said, his voice colder now, stripped of its earlier politeness. "We understand you and your friend have been collecting some interesting samples around the county." My chest tightened, but I kept my footing steady beside Claire on the porch, refusing to let them see the fear crawling under my plates. "We're simply exercising our rights as neighbors," Claire said, her voice calm and clear despite everything. The man smiled that same thin smile from before. "There's a clause in our purchase agreements about interference with active acquisitions. I'd hate for that to complicate your situation any further than it already is." It was a threat, plain and simple, and I understood immediately that they knew exactly what we had found. Whatever protections human law offered Claire against this kind of pressure, First Continental clearly believed they could outmaneuver it, and that terrified me more than anything else that night. "You should leave," I said, stepping slightly forward, my translator carrying my words in a tone flat and firm. "Whatever agreement you believe protects you, it does not cover the illegal use of restricted alien technology on compact regulated soil. That is no longer a matter for human courts alone." Something shifted in the man's expression, just barely, a flicker of uncertainty breaking through his practiced calm. He had not expected me to know that detail, and for a moment I saw exactly how much confidence he lost in that single sentence. "We'll be in touch," he said finally, turning back toward the truck without another word, his companions following close behind. The headlights swung away into darkness, and only then did I let myself breathe again. Claire turned to me, her hand still trembling slightly from the confrontation. "How much time do we have left?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I don't think they'll wait for the foreclosure date anymore. I think they'll try to erase the evidence before the council responds." She looked out at her land, silver under the moonlight, cattle grazing peacefully as though nothing threatened them at all. "Then we protect it tonight." We spent the rest of that night moving every remaining sample and every backup copy of Esqui's statement into a hidden compartment beneath Claire's truck, a space her late husband had built years ago for hauling valuables safely across state lines. It felt strange, hiding evidence like criminals when we were the ones trying to stop a crime, but desperation reshapes what feels reasonable very quickly. Just after midnight, headlights appeared again, this time without warning, cutting across the fields toward the old well pump near the northern fence line, far from the house where Claire could not easily see them. I spotted the movement first, a shape crouched near the pump housing, tools glinting faintly under moonlight. "They're trying to destroy the well," I whispered. "If they contaminate it further, or damage the site entirely, there won't be enough evidence left to prove any of this." Claire didn't hesitate. She grabbed a flashlight and moved toward the truck, and I followed close behind, my pulse hammering harder than it had in years. We drove without headlights across the field, bouncing over uneven ground, until we were close enough to see two figures working quickly near the pump, one holding a container of something that glowed faintly blue under the flashlight beam Claire finally switched on. "Stop right there," Claire shouted, stepping out of the truck with a boldness that startled even me. The two figures froze, then bolted toward a smaller vehicle, parked further down the fence line, abandoning the container in their hurry to escape. I ran forward and caught the container before it could spill, my hand steady despite everything, recognizing instantly that it held a concentrated version of the same restricted chemical poisoning the water table across 6 ranches. By the time their vehicle disappeared down the road, Claire and I stood together in the cold night air, breathing hard, holding proof so damaging it could end First Continental's entire operation in this county. It was reckless. It was terrifying. But it worked. I submitted the container and photographs of the attempted sabotage to the Compact Council within the hour, attaching them directly to the original complaint, and this time the response came within minutes instead of days. An emergency review had been opened. First Continental's license to operate any compact regulated technology on Earth was suspended immediately, pending full investigation. Word spread through the county fast after that. Other ranchers who had lost their land to First Continental over the past 2 years came forward once they learned the truth, adding their own stories, their own suspicions, until the case against the company grew too large to ignore or bury. Federal investigators arrived within days, drawn by the scale of fraud uncovered once the compact violation forced everything into the open. Claire's foreclosure proceedings collapsed less than a week later, the debt itself thrown into question once investigators proved her losses had been caused by deliberate sabotage rather than natural drought. The relief on her face when she read that final letter was unlike anything I had ever seen from her before, years of quiet worry finally lifting all at once. The morning the first real snow of the season fell, soft and steady over the ranch, Claire and I stood on that same porch where everything between us had begun 3 years earlier. Her cattle grazed peacefully across land that was finally, truly safe again. And the well behind the house ran clean for the first time in over a year. You didn't have to do all of this, she said quietly, watching snowflakes settle across the fields. Neither did you, I answered. 11 days, 3 lives saved. I have had 3 years to calculate exactly how much I owed you, Claire. I assure you, I still owed you more than this. She laughed then, a real laugh, warm and unguarded, the kind I had not heard from her since long before that foreclosure letter arrived. Get inside before you freeze out here like some kind of fool. Inside, there was milk on the table, same as always, steam rising gently from 2 cups of coffee beside it. Some debts, I had come to understand over these strange and difficult years living among humans, were never really meant to be repaid in full. People like Claire did not offer kindness expecting anything back. They simply wanted you to stay, to sit at their table, to be part of something warm on a cold night. So I stayed, grateful beyond words that a glass of milk offered freely to 3 starving children years ago had somehow led me back to the one place on this entire world that finally felt like home.